Hello. Welcome to Privilege Having Week in the Americas, or just the United States of America. Actually, it used to be called Thanksgiving Week, but then these different clown colleges got together and decided to do a full broadside against American traditionalism and have gone through and renamed all of our holidays. And the holiday that was to occur tomorrow, called Thanksgiving, is now Privilege Having Day. So we all get to huddle around and declare our privileges one by one, and then order ourselves in some sort of musical chairs of dominance and submission. I mean, you guys can totally do that, or you can just like do the old school thing and watch freaking football if that's all you end up doing with your life. This is Benjamin Boyce, and I am just chiming in, saying hi to y'all. If you have any questions, I can answer them, or if you don't have any questions, I'll just ramble into the camera for some time. You know, YouTube has taken away the dislike counter on these videos, but I get to still see them, so thank you for thanking me, whoever you are. Hope you guys have a few days off for Privilege Having Day. With regards to what I do during the day of my job, I have today and Friday off as well as tomorrow. So I have a long weekend. I've been just kind of noodling around on the internet, trying to find my bearings, doing little side projects and stuff like that. And that's all that I've been really doing. And then I'm like, well, you know what? It's 4 o'clock. It's 4:15. I can probably get away with sipping on a beer and speaking into a camera for a bit and checking in with my audience, insofar as you want to be my audience for the time being. And maybe we can discuss our relative privilege, or not. We could just completely let go of the woke calendar and its vicissitudes of morality being forced upon us. What are you guys doing? Matthias is smoking a turkey. That is quite an endeavor. Well, it will take you all day. And are you employed in that right now, Matthias? Or are you in the future? You have to be in America because you wouldn't be cooking a turkey on this sacred day if you weren't in America. So maybe you're getting a leg up on the bird time and you're doing it right now. Or you're checking in and just looking for things to listen to while you prep that glorious bird for the... What are you going to smoke with it? What are you going to smoke it in? What wood? Let us know. And I will be able to pronounce that on my channel. I've been having this back and forth with a very small contingent of females about whether I'm creepy or rapey or not. And it's not an even split. I should run a poll, but there's a significant portion of women who find my calm voice creepy. One person even said that it was serial rapisty, which is pretty cool. I've never been compared to a serial rapist. If that's how they talk, then I guess I'm just a serial rapist. I was thinking about some sort of wordplay about the word slay. You know, I'm just like, I'm a slayer. I'm a serial slayer, but I don't know. And then other women kind of like my voice. I'm not going to change my voice for women, but it's interesting to hear the opinions on whether what kind of a person I come across as when I'm speaking into a microphone and stuff like that. It's kind of cool to be called a serial killer, I think. Yeah, serial killer was the thing. I'm gonna adjust this a little bit. Still trying to get my setup to be just right. I have this. I finally got the. You see this sheen? I finally got this light bulb. I'm gonna have to try to figure out if I can change the color because I got these light bulbs for this this 20-foot like string, and then there's one light bulb, and then I got a light bulb that fit that, and it's like so super bright that I've wrapped it in tinfoil with a little tiny output, so it doesn't light up the black background, but it just does light up me and my shoulders. So we're getting that close to having what is going to be the final thing, but still everything is always out of whack or something like that. Did I forget to talk about Matthias's What wood he's smoking it in? Let's look at that. Matthias. Maple wood. Whoa, smoked mac and cheese and ham as well. This man is getting ready to... I hope you have plenty of people to help you devour these tasty victuals, because it would be rather lonely to have an entire turkey, mac and cheese, and ham to yourself. Maybe that would actually be the height of joy for some people, but it might make other people kind of lonely. It's a little cold, but not too cold, but I do have my heater on, so I just turned it down into the fan off, but there still might be like a very high ringing buzz, but it shouldn't pick up in the microphone if my audio is even audible. Sounds fine. You should Elizabeth Holmes your voice. Are you talking about? No, that's Elizabeth Moss, who played in Mad Men, and then now she's a part of that the hooded female action show on Hulu, The Handmaid's Tale. I don't know anything about it except they run around with machine guns and they wear like nuns' hoods and they have babies. I don't really understand it beyond that, but Elizabeth Holmes, I do not know, and I don't know what I should do to make my voice homey. Homey? Yeah, we're getting towards a studio. I resisted it. Mike Nina got on my case quite a bit to up my game, and then Kato or Katoya on Twitter really railed at me and said, "Get your act together, so you can have better people on your show." No, she likes the people that I have on my show, but she thinks I could get like John McWhorter or something like that. But anyways, so I just been doing a lot of interviews like crazy and doing comments on the Twitter about various issues like crazy. But I really don't have like like an ideology or an agenda right now. I'm kind of like agenda drifting right now. I really don't know what to do. I have this evergreen thing that I don't have the virility that makes me want to attack the issue. But I'm slowly putting it together. Elizabeth Holmes was the CEO of Theranos. She lowered her voice. Is that how CEOs do it? Should I even lower my voice? I don't even know if I could do that. Is that how I would just sound like a teddy bear? Hi, this is Benjamin Boyce, and welcome to Conversations. Stereo Mike is smoking something other than a turkey and sipping on some 40-year-old Armagnac. Cognac? Armagnac. I don't know. Armagnac, it sounds like some sort of cognac, but with amaretto. So like an amaretto, like wine kind of weird, like crossover. That does sound kind of weird to me. A lot of people know a lot about Elizabeth Holmes. Mostly is that she lowered her voice and was a CEO. And got arrested. She was probably selling futures or pasts to people. I mean, if you really want to like make a living and get your yacht, you have to sell either futures or pasts to people. I read this very fascinating article. Let me see if I can find it real quick about why why Joe Biden's is failing right now, why his approval ratings are collapsing, and this article, which I will pull up as soon as my phone does what it wants me to do, was talking about, it's called Joe Biden's Big Squeeze, and it's on msn.com, their Intelligencer. And maybe I'll put that into chat so you guys can check it out. It was really well done. And it goes through how his mandate was to be moderate, but the way that the Democratic Party has been sorting itself out is that you have the leftoids and then you have the plutocrats. And the centrists are basically doing the bidding of the plutocrats. And the leftists are basically doing the bidding of the far lefts, and the far left is actually in so much power because of all these millionaires that are donating to these nonprofits. Here, I'll put that in there. And the nonprofits are driving the Democratic Party, at least the public face of the Democratic Party, along with Fox. Fox is leaning into the far left takeover because it's good for business for Fox. The nonprofits are pushing the lefter, and then the centrist Democrats are basically falling in line with the plutocrats, so that the middle class is being completely screwed over. And then Joe Biden, for what it's worth, it's basically tanking because his entire party, his Build Back Better thing, was basically cut to ribbons. And it was a fascinating article, and it's really interesting to try to back away from the culture war and see that it is actually a game. I woke up last night rather early. It was like 1:30 or something, and my cat Bodhi was like in this really awkward position on top of me, and I like had to shift him off, And I was thinking about people being so intensely ideologically wrong with their beliefs about things. And, with the Kyle Rittenhouse, the takes on Kyle Rittenhouse are just so weird to me. And the various different narratives that pop around that to justify these crazy takes are it's so weird to me. And because there's the evidence, and then there's the law, and then there's the court case, and then there's the verdict, and then there's this whole narrative on top of that. And the right's kind of got a narrative, and the left's got this narrative, but the left's narrative, from Stephen Colbert all the way down, is just so weird. It's just so off the mark to me. And the fervor with which people believe this thing that's completely off the mark, it really worries me, right? It just really worries me. And I woke up about that, and I just felt like just lost and not blackpilled, but I just felt so just filled with despair that people are like attached to these narratives that don't line up to reality. And what can I do about it? What can I do about it? And so I kind of prayed about it a little bit. I'm like, just let me not be angry with my enemies. Allow me to, insofar as I have these enemies, allow me to accept them and not be angry with them, and, not to become tight like they do. I don't want to replicate the tightness of their belief with a counter belief or anything like that, because that doesn't change anything. You come after people and they're just they get tighter and tighter and tighter, and they have to kind of see things on their own. But then I was thinking, well, if I ask God, if I ask to be relieved of this, this hardness against lies or against falseness, then I'm probably cutting myself short, because it's actually really important for us to know what's right and wrong, and to stand up for the truth and stand up for falseness. So it's probably not correct or good for me to ask that I just allow people to live within lies, right? There's got to be some other way of going about figuring out how to react to that. And one way is just to look at it as a culture war that's not necessarily entirely a conspiracy, but a convergence of interests that is just playing itself out. And how it will play itself out over time is up in the air. And, to what degree, it's the open question, what degree is it my responsibility to do anything about that? And how should I do something about that is the open question. And as I was speaking, I think on live stream or on a recent interview, I've been doing so many interviews. I'm like 6 interviews behind. I have 6 interviews on my hard drive that I'm going to publish, but I publish every other day because the interview's an hour long. I want people to have time to watch the stuff that they want to watch. And if I do a series of stuff about, let's say, gender or about other issues, people want to be able to catch up with that content. I want to give people time to breathe with the content. So I can't just publish all these interviews, but because I'm interviewing every day, basically, or 5 times a week, and I'm only publishing 3 videos a week, I'm just getting this backlog, which is kind of nice to have. But then I don't know what I've talked about and what I've not talked about, and I don't like necessarily repeating myself, but there's different ways of playing a game. And it was the interview with Chris Boutet, who spoke with me about 12-step programs. And actually, for some reason, past weekend, I did 2 interviews about drug addiction and recovery. One with Adam from Twitter and one with Chris Boutet. I don't even know if I need to figure out how to pronounce his last name. It's got an accent on it. And so we were talking about his path into abuse of substance and then out of that, and then his work subsequent with that on YouTube. And now he basically just does interviews with authors at this point. But we were talking also about how to interact with disagreement online, and how do we not become cult leaders, and how do we avoid becoming, stuck on top of a wobbly hierarchy of ideology that we're now promoting because we're getting rewarded by it and incentivized by it. And there's just different ways of undercutting a community that would form under somebody who is, boosting up their priors, or who's only feeding them what they want to hear. So there's a way of questioning oneself. There's a way of always kind of questioning the narrative, even the one that you cling to. And there's also just basic humorist tactics that have kind of a certain sort of bite to them, but also angle the conversation away from it becoming too serious. And that's one way in which I feel like I could be productive, is to figure out the way to make a joke about something. Speaking of which, did you guys see this? Here, let me see if I can put it up on the screen. We go over here, and then we go over to here, and then we go over, wait, hold on. Yeah. Okay, so Women's March open. Yeah, Women's March. This is their tweet. It was from yesterday, right? Yeah. Yesterday, I listened to this. This is great. Here, where do I go? Okay, I go over here. Wait, no, I go over here. They go over there. We apologize deeply for the email that was sent today. $14.92 was our average donation amount this week. It was an oversight on our part to not make the connection to a year of colonization, conquest, and genocide for indigenous people, especially before Thanksgiving. So, Women's March apologized for including the amount of $14.92 in their email, and then they prostrated that. It's like, okay, this is really easy. So there's two responses that I came up with. They're both a variation of the same thing. Basically, they paid an intern wage slave $16.19 to write this thing. Or this is what happens when your entire media budget is $19.84. Those are my jokes about that. It's just so silly. It's like, I was thinking about this. There's more like depth psychology going on here, but these, insofar as woke is some sort of religion, or insofar as what is a religious kind of aesthetic that's appearing within progressive circles that we call woke is kind of religious. They have a specific sort of superstitious taboo and fetishization that's going on with these various different symbols. And 1492 and 1619, I mean, just the amount, 1419, somebody calculated that, somebody divided something by something and they came up with that amount. And then they emailed that out. And then you wonder, well, did they get pushback here, there, or the other place? So somebody said, uh-oh. Or somebody said, why would you use that year? Christopher Columbus is evil. He's a genocidal conquesting colonizer. Genocidal conquesting colonizer. Don't remind me of that. You wonder how histrionic people were being about this. If somebody alleged them doing violence by publishing that amount, but still then they prostrate themselves to it. And of course we call it a virtue signal, but there isn't just a virtue signal. The virtue signal is, even if it is a gesture, even as a gesture, it is hollow or substanceless or doesn't do anything, it still has a certain content. It still has a certain emotional content, and that emotion feeds up into a system of belief or some sort of religious kind of organization or system that is then fed and reified by these virtue signals. So the virtue signal is always has some sort of content to it. Even if it's used cynically, it's still signaling something, and it's participating in some sort of chorus of meaning in it. And the magic power that is given to these, or the psychic power that is invested into these symbols, 1492, or, they'll use the term bodies, and they'll preface the bodies with some sort of qualifier about the race or something. And then these gender things, they're not stable, but they do have meaning. And then they are able to, I don't know. There's just something to be said about the sincerity with which, insofar as there is sincerity, and there is sincerity in here, whether they are even reacting from fear of offense, there's still a sincerity there, even if they are trying to, hedge up their base, or proclaim themselves as washed of sin of some sort. Just purely for marketing reasons. There's still some sort of church that's going on there. There's still some sort of performative behavior that happens. And the thing is that I don't know to what degree there's any sort of meaning in spending all of my time and all of my life just going around and looking at that kind of crap and making fun of it. Like, what kind of life is that? What kind of meaning is that actually making? Other than the joke, because it's ridiculous. So the problem with becoming a clown or a comic or a parodist or a jester is that, I don't know, it just feels like so nihilistic. It's like you're dancing over the abyss on some reason. I'm getting into my own head. Let's look at the chat and have a sip. Everybody's like putting very triggering number combinations into chat. So if you guys are triggered, like a V8, vroom, vroom, don't look at the word 454. I know there's other like white supremacist numbers or whatever and stuff like that. Oh yeah. I don't think I should put it up on, the screen, but tell Vildo, put it up there. Banana Bread says, I'm not a cult leader. I'm a scout leader of the Boy Scouts. Yeah, that's what I am. I'm like a CEO of the Boy Scouts. I'm like a big teddy bear in the wilderness. I'm just running around eating salmon. I've been eating salmon for breakfast, actually. It makes me feel like a bear, but a bear has different connotations too. That's a sacred symbol for certain groups too. And I'm not like an Benjamin Owen fan or Owen Benjamin fan. I mean, not that I'm not a fan of him, but I'm not like a bear. And then I'm not the other kind of bear either. I just like living in the Pacific Northwest and munching on a slab of smoked salmon is good. It feels good. Super chat Norm Kelly. Do you think English, linguistic pluralism, or linguistic purism would be good for the English language? English, linguistic purism. Are you talking about like grammar? In what way are we talking about like a linguistic purism? Like one thing means something, like some sort of adherence to the syntax or to a definitional relationship to language, like what words mean and how words are put together and their definitions matter. I'd like to know more about that question. So I'm gonna look for Norm. If you could specify what you mean by English purism or linguistic purism would be good for the English language. And while I'm waiting for that, I'm going to prop up Scribe Light. I think he's in the Pacific Northwest. He was on YouTube before me, and he's been not railing, but he's been really patiently hammering against this stuff for a long, long time. He has very thorough work. And the Scribe Light writes, I empathize after 5 years of covering SJW type materials on my channel. I do wonder what the point is. All I can say is, I feel like to do otherwise would be just to give up. Shrug. Well, I guess that's the thing. Like if it's making you feel hollow inside and dead inside, at least you're not giving up, right? At least we're going forward. Scribe Light is great. I highly recommend Scribe Light. He's in the chat if you guys want to click on his name and watch his videos. Norm Kelly writes, some take it as far as grammar, but most only take it about vocabulary. Well, I mean, I don't think that it's necessarily useful outside of pedantic outside of pedantic contexts, I don't think it's necessarily useful to enforce or police language. Within any sort of discussion, within any sort of language game in which we're trying to make meaning or tease meaning or create nuance or argue or debate or do any sort of exchange of information about a certain thing, we should always be defining our terms within that context, right? So you get the pedantry out of the way and say, when I use the word woke, this is what I mean. Or when I use this term, this is what I mean. And then within the context of that, it should be obvious what you mean. And if you misspeak or you misstep or use a word that has ambiguity, if your interlocutor or the person you're speaking with, it wants to keep up or keep you accountable, or you want to keep accountable, you should, make sure that you're always defining your terms. So I don't believe people, third parties especially, going around and policing behavior is necessarily good for discourse, because you're not actually creating meaning. You might be scrubbing meaning, and if you're in a pedantic or an editorial context, then sure, that makes sense. Like within a pedantic context, I mean, like in schools, when you're teaching people how to think, or you're teaching somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about to know what they're talking about, then yes, there should be some sort of pedantry or some sort of policing of language so that people actually know what they're talking about and are aware of the broader discourse. And also within an editorial context, which is again about tailoring a piece of media, like a piece of writing or a piece of discourse, to a broader audience, then there should be some sort of, purism with regards to the language so that the information can be transmitted as cleanly as possible. But outside of pedantry and editorializing, there's not really much sense of people going around and policing other people's discourse. You can say, I guess we can't always be correcting each other and stuff like that. And that's necessary. But again, in the context of what? Comments on the internet, videos on the internet, Like I appreciate when I learned that legislator and legislator are two different words, and I should say legislator and legislature when I just put them both together and I slurred them accent-wise. Sometimes I'm corrected because I'm using the wrong accent or I'm mispronouncing something so-called, but I'm usually mispronouncing something either because I've only read it or I'm making a mistake and I should know better, or it just sounds better to my ear, like argument. Like I don't like saying G in argument. So people saying, why don't you say argument like you should say argument, telling me that I'm saying argument wrong, or like necessarily adding to discourse. They might make me more understandable, but when I say argument, you know that I mean argument, whether or not I pronounce that frickin' G, argument, right? So to the extent that it still means something, I don't know how much energy we should be pouring into policing discourse. I don't know if that answered your question, but I do think that there should be some sort of policing of discourse insofar as the person who's speaking to the other person is clearly defining their terms. And if they misuse a term, then they should also be corrected in order to, insofar as what they're saying has any sort of bearing with regards to broader discourse. Super chat, Jacob Jakerson. Is that Howard Hughes in your photo, dude? I would call all of that 1492 nonsense a polemic. Of course, the reactivation and polemics of these political judiciary are crap, you disappeared. Okay, we're going to quote Michel Foucault right now. Of course, the reactivation in polemics. Is that like the French version of Pokemon? Polemics or polemics of these political judiciary or religious practices more than theater. Yeah, it is more than theater. It's a little bit more than theater. And so we discount the power of these words when we just say it's virtue signaling. So insofar as we are attacking it and making it ridiculous or revealing its ridiculosity in the act of appending a ridiculous recontextualization of it, like I did with 1619 or 1984, that decreases the meaning. So mockery decreases or it leaches the meaning out of something. So insofar as they are creating a taboo or a fetish around something, mocking that or misusing that or putting that into context where it looks like it's absurd, juxtaposing that is one way to start to collapse the meaning and the entire system of meaning that is being performed by these virtue signals. So one way of eroding the virtue signal is to make it meaningless But to just say that it doesn't have any meaning is wrong. To say that 1492, or them apologizing for 1492, is ridiculous is true. To say that it's meaningless or a meaningless virtue signal is false. Otherwise, there would be no sense or there would be no reaction to it. If it didn't have any value, it wouldn't be ridiculous. So we're not only making it ridiculous with regards to the specific statement, we're also calling the entire formality or the theatrics that edges into some sort of religious theater with meaning, we're also calling into question that entire system. Now, to what extent we can argue against the woke or whatever that thing is, we can ridicule it, and to what extent any of that does anything for anyone other than to accrue us to an anti-woke agenda or an anti-woke movement is an open question. Like, I don't know if it's a positive move to simply argue against it or ridicule it. And I've spoken about that a lot. And that's kind of what, like, the crisis of meaning that I'm in, waiting for an agenda to galvanize me, other than just making good discussions, which is just real. That's the realest thing that is the most fruitful, even if there's a lot of circularity in the discussions and there's repetition of themes and people end up saying a lot of the things that other people are already saying. I try to, within the discourses that I have with people on my channel, to always say, okay, well, how can we do a little bit better? How can we look at this a little bit newer, right? So within the context of a dialogue, I feel that there's actually some sort of progress to be made and art to be had. But just strict cultural criticism as a talking head is just kind of really... I just find it problematic. Halo Smith. I wonder what Halo Smith is playing. Are you playing Halo? Duh. Why do you think people are so quick to jump on the worst inference when interpreting what someone is saying, especially online? Bad reading. It's interesting. I was having a thought and I didn't completely flesh it out because it was too simple and I was really busy. And I thought, on Twitter, you can put things, you can post things, you can delete things, or you can put things into your draft folder. And I was really busy and I thought I put it in my draft folder and it ended up being published. And then I looked at it again and it was getting too much discourse around it. It was getting too much value accrued to it. So I didn't want to delete it because again, it's just a statement that I'm throwing out online. Which is meant to cause discussion to happen. And that statement specifically was that, and it wasn't clever. It was very just straightforward and simple, which is okay if you're Orwell to do, but I don't like being Orwell. I want to be James Joyce or William Blake or Oscar Wilde. I want this, I just want the... Anyway, so the statement was about, it's odd that some women react with more vitriol to a compliment than to an insult. And it was just a thought that I was playing with and wasn't completely developed. But I've noticed that specifically when I'm interviewing a woman, a third-party woman will come around, and if I am too generous, gentle, nice, or flirty, or compliment them, I will be, I'll stir up ire, which doesn't come in the form of ridicule so much as people saying that I shouldn't act that way, and taking surrogate offense for the woman that they see for some reason. And I was just thinking, why is it that it's just odd that some women find compliments more insulting than insults? Like they would have less. It just seems like for a very small amount of women that are probably overrepresented because they speak out about this, it just seems like there's some sort of odd thing where a compliment is more insulting than an insult. So I put that out there. And of course, the first response to that was that, yes, if you're complimenting a woman on her rack, that is definitely more insulting than an insult. It's, and it depends on the context. So just within context of that one comment, the easiest thing to do is to, state exactly where it's okay to be insulted by a compliment. And of course, a compliment about somebody's breasts, right, it's not kosher. Like, that's not something that I would do. But like, your hair's nice, or just I like your voice, or just a compliment, like just a compliment beyond some sort of crude kind of compliment still incites ire more than an insult would. It's just odd. There's just a question there about the dynamic that I see in that. So I was just trying to make that up. And of course, most people wouldn't interpret that automatically as the worst possible version of that statement. Some people will say that I'm just trying to give men carte blanche to completely ignore the feelings of women, which is not what I'm trying to do. Though you could read that into that statement, that of course women would be insulted by a compliment if the compliment's actually putting them down, objectifying them, or making them seem shallow, or something along that nature, bringing up some sort of sexual thing or some sort of expectation on behalf of the complimentor to get something in return for the compliment, which isn't a compliment. A compliment is something that you give free. If you expect something from your compliment, it is ipso facto not a compliment anymore, as far as I'm concerned. But with regards to the broader tendency of all of us to take the worst possible interpretation of a comment and run with that, it's a bad habit. And usually it has to do with some sort of ingrained, behavioralized way of interacting with a certain stimulus. You're being triggered to read something in a certain way. And also it might be the effect that your narrative requires you to sift things into good and bad. And that ends up, whenever there's an ambiguous statement where you can't say is good or bad, you end up collapsing all of the ambiguity in whatever you find into the good pile or the bad pile. And so it's basically kind of just laziness on behalf of somebody who is enacting an ideological narrative or sorting data into these piles of good or bad to automatically squash down any sort of statement into the worst or the best, simply for the sake of convenience or efficiency in parsing through all the data. And I need to get Jesse Manisto on, but we have some problems because I want to talk about the skills that she learned as a CIA information analyst, about how we as individuals interacting with massive amounts of media can learn basic skills that the CIA teaches with regards to just figuring out how to put data into different categories, right? So before I can have that conversation, I need to state out all my questions, and then we have to pass it to the CIA, right? Before we can even have that conversation. And so I'm behind on that. But that is just the skills that we have with regards to information are easily more to blame than malice, right? If something's better explained by stupidity or mediocrity or a lack of skill, rather than malice, it's better just to try to constellate it as somebody doesn't actually understand what you're talking about, rather than they're just being mean. Although, of course, mean people are out there. I'm going to go back to Jacob Jakerson's corrective chat. I left out a word in that, quote, nothing more than theater. But Foucault was saying there's certain sorts of polemics that are nothing more than theater, but Foucault went on to make the points you did. Has anyone seen a new idea come out of a polemic? Foucault in the same interview. Sounds like a juicy interview, Jacob. And if you want to try to post that in chat, and I can catch that, I probably won't be able to. But if there's a YouTube video, it'd be great to have that in chat. Or if you give the title in chat, maybe I can look that up later on. I was just going to look up the word polemic really quick, because even though I really wanted to get into rhetoric, I could never keep all these terms straight. Like, what is it to denote and what is it to connote? I can never keep those two separate in my mind. There's denotative and connotative knowledge, and rhetoric is just all these terms. Even grammar I have a hard time with. Like just figuring out like the subject, the predicate, and the object. Like I always just, the predicate, I'm like, what is a predicate? Like I can't like really figure it out. And I think it's because I've only ever read rhetoric. If I had somebody like actually say it out loud, I'd be able to figure out some tools to keep those words into my head, but I can't. But I wanted to look up polemic in the dictionary. A strong verbal or written attack on someone or something, from the 17th century via medieval Latin, from Greek polemikos, from polemos, from war. So it's specifically about an attack, usually polemics, the art or practice of engaging in controversial debate or dispute. So a polemic is already on a certain sort of rhetorical footing with regards to a certain sort of either combative nature or some sort of win state, some sort of tension and tension resolution state, wherein one person gets to decide what everything means, or their argument wins, which basically means that insofar as their argument wins, it provides the brick for the next layer of discourse, or it begins to become some sort of definitional understanding of an issue. Reciprocity. Taking a sip. Somebody thinks I have great pecs. I don't. I don't work out. I should work on my pecs. Allow me to have a couple sips here. Okay, Simon W. I remember commenting on a male friend's sad "sorry for interacting with a woman" post. I told him he was cool and he should just hit on women and not feel bad about it. He got very mad. I think there's an art to flirtation, right? Okay, so I'm not going to say that I believe this or that I'm ascribing this, but in response, there was actually a lot of good discussion about that very blanket statement that I made, that some women seem to get more offended by compliments than insults. It's just odd. It's just peculiar. And there's a lot of really good conversation around that. A lot of women actually gave their points of view on that with regards to just beyond very crude sorts of compliments that men give, just certain sorts of behaviors that they see in men that have certain sorts of consequences for them. Somebody also said that a guy commented, I believe it's a guy, I can't remember who it was, but somebody commented on that comment that I made in the void of Twitter, that since the 80s, feminists have been signal jamming and teaching college girls to read everything that a man says as problematic. If they say that they're sad, you problematize that. If they flirt with you, you problematize that. If they're apologetic to you, you problematize that. It was just interesting. And I don't know the data on that, but it is a tendency within certain sorts of dynamics between the male and the female that men can end up becoming jaded by women and starting to read everything a woman does in one way or another and have a very low resolution idea of what a woman means when she says things. And the same is true with women, that there are just certain women who, with regards to men, for whatever reason, collate all the things that a man does into certain categories that are from suspicious to outright offensive. And signal jamming, or the act of discourse that has arisen from the study that was birthed by feminism. I mean, beyond feminism getting some sort of material right or some sort of political outcome, within the academy, feminism is a discourse. Feminism took up the mantle of rhetoric and began to read itself into all these different things. And there are feminist ways of reading texts in literary theory and in political discourse, where the whole goal is to take a feminist supposition and then work that out across all these different texts. And I think that happens beyond, that's just not just something that women do. It's not just something feminism does. That's something that the academy does. And that's ultimately something that all of us do insofar as we are parsing data. I got tetchy with Claire Lemon, who is the chief editor and the founder of Quillette, and Quillette is phenomenal conversation piece. It's been doing really good work and has a lot of great writers. But Claire went after Brett and Heather for some reason because of the COVID thing. And she just started making some pretty intense statements, Claire did. And then she went after Heather. And I got really triggered when she went after Heather. I just don't like it when people go after Heather. She's like a big sister to me. So I get like, don't you go after Heather. Right. And then I made a meme and I intimated, I used a Conquest's Laws of Politics, I believe it is, a Conquest's Law. You can look that up, but I think it's a politics. And there's 3 laws. And I believe the second law is that any organization that is not explicitly right-wing will sooner or later become left-wing. And I changed that around that every influencer that isn't explicitly anti-woke will eventually manifest woke patterns of behavior. Now, when you throw that word woke around, there's a lot of discourse around that word. And Claire thought that I was talking about Quillette. I was just talking about her canceling Brett and Heather and making some very intense claims about there has been zero valid science around the vaccines or complications with regards to the vaccines. She said something very explicit. I can't remember right now. I'm not going to subject you guys to me looking it up, but she just made some very absolute terms with regards to there's the right way, which is science, and then there's the wrong way, which is not science. And all the science that she had at her disposal that she propped up was science that favored her, her way, and all the things that didn't line up to her way was not science anymore, which is just a weird slippage from science as a process of ongoing discovery, debate, and exploration, and then science as this truth verification thing. It's no longer about falsification; it's about verification. And I called Claire woke, and then. Which I didn't really want to do. I kind of like participated in some mudslinging with her. Why did I get on that? Well, I abused the term woke insofar as I took this kind of progressive principle and then I just started to extrapolate from woke patterns of behavior of absolutism, right? So absolutism is beyond woke. That's just a fundamentalist precept. So I was just I kind of dumbed down and I did violence to that word, as philosophers of language would say. I did violence to the word woke by extending its meaning into sorts of behavior that are absolutist and that use very for and against us kind of behavioral patterns, which is what the anti-woke is exhibiting as well. Claire Lehman's a really interesting character. She's been on a really interesting trajectory with regards to the post-COVID world. Like, she was very heterodox and very open and communicative and collating a lot of great voices and stuff. But as soon as the lockdowns happened and the vaccines things happened, she became very rigid with regards to that one thing. And she probably has reasons for that. I don't really understand. It's just really interesting for her to go from heterodox to very orthodox behavior over one issue. And that's the really interesting thing about the any sort of very high intensity kind of discourse, is that it does cause this narrowing or rigidity of thought. And that is one way in which I see wokeness working itself out, is that the woke the precept or what prefigures woke activity is this narrative that things are a life and death struggle, or things are basically so thoroughly wrong that to not act according to a certain way is to promulgate violence and promulgate death and basically align yourself with evil. So before woke goes critical, the assumption it puts into the water that I've seen at Evergreen is that it turns up the heat and it turns up the context of the discourse, whatever it is, or of the society, into a life and death struggle, where there's an end of history that's imminent, and so we have to be on the right side of history. So insofar as the woke want to be on the right side of history, they don't think of history as something that is written down. They think of history as something that we are writing right now, and that is a life and death struggle right now. Like the urgency with which the woke operate is in and of itself not necessarily woke, but it's a precondition to woke behavior, that urgency of framing. Kind of like everything just gets narrowed, like you're Indiana Jones and you're trying to escape like some sort of trap with your little pot of gold. Some men are also insulted by compliments. Leave the princesses in the dust unless you want to be ruled by a queen. Wait, what? I have to tease that out. Leave the princesses in the dust unless you want to be ruled by a queen. Well, don't we want to be ruled by a queen? Is a queen like some sort of tyrant? This is interesting. There's a lot of ambiguity in here. So I don't even know how to give it a good or a bad reading because it's so ambiguous. Meg Griffin was saying, some men are also insulted by compliments. Leave the princesses in the dust unless you want to be ruled by a queen. You know, I was thinking today about how many friends I've had that have been little girls. Okay, I'm going to get, okay, people might like go back and do something bad with this, but I've worked in preschool and then I work with kids right now. And I've had a lot of 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8-year-old friends, and they're all girls. Well, not all of them are girls, but like I was thinking about the friendships that I've had with young women. And I was thinking of that because in my interview with Stella and Sasha, there were a certain amount of comments that were criticizing my terms, how I called women. Sometimes I would call women female, and sometimes I called them young women, and sometimes I called them girls. And the slippage of my terms was causing some offense, insofar as the term girl might be seen, or could be seen, or probably is seen, as some sort of derogatory, or in the very least patronizing view of women. When you're talking about young women and you call them girls, it is absolutely justified to read into that from me as me looking down on women. And I was thinking about that and thinking about the word girl, like what does it mean to me? Is it a way for me to put myself as looking down on a woman or looking up to a woman? I would never call an older woman girl, but I do call women younger than me girls, or younger. I would like be more tendency to extend the word girl beyond the age that I would extend the word boy. But I have been known to call kids or college students kids, right? When there's an argument to be made that they're not kids, they're adults and stuff. But then I was just thinking about that. Like, why do I have a slippage of term with women, girls, young girls, and females? And should I shore up that language? Should I clean up that language? Should I standardize that language? And who should I listen to with regards to what they want me to be saying? But I was just thinking about my friendships with girls. Like, okay, so what is a girl to me? And I was just thinking about the year and a half or 2 years that I spent with 2-year-olds, and the friendships that I had with Jane and with Augusta and Holly and all these little girls. And I would have, beyond the vast, difference between my brain and their brain, we would still have some sort of friendship. And I would always I was just thinking about how I would treat them like they're women. I would treat them like they're already grown up. And I would even treat them like grannies. I would even treat them like they're my elder sometimes. And I would also treat them like a girl at other times. And I was just thinking about this phrase of seeing the granny and the girl and the girl and the granny, right? When I look at adults, I see the children that they were. And when I look at children, I see the adults that they will be, or that they already are. I see that the continuum of age within human beings is not simply age or simply a matter of maturity in a way that is earned through life experience, through success and failure, right? So maturity is not necessarily equated with wisdom. There's still something that's very wise inside of the child, and there's still something very foolish in in the old person or in the adult. And to be able to see that and then to honor the girl and the granny and the girl might be a way to explain why my terms for women kind of has some sort of slippage with regards to age that I don't think is paternal or patronizing. At least I don't mean that, but I do understand that the reading is there for that. So when Meg Griffin said, some men are also insulted by compliments, leave the princess in the dust unless you want to be ruled by a queen. That just made me think about seeing the princess and the queen and the queen and the princess. And I don't know, Meg, what you mean by princess. Like, is that the spoiled princess, or is that like somebody, a princess who actually possesses her skills and possesses her regality, and is a queen simply somebody who is an authority figure or who is also a consort of the state, or the matron of the order, right? The hearth and the heart and the matriarchal. What's the middle of a circle? Spoke? No, spoke goes out. Yeah, the matriarchal center from which spokes all of the different aspects of empire. So, in order for me to interpret that, I would have to understand what you mean by princess and what you mean by queen. But thank you for that adventure into storytelling. WTF, am I actually right? Can you please everyone? Oh, you can't please everyone. You are a very polite man, Benjamin. This is a problem for men and women. They set a standard so high nobody knows where they stand anymore. That's a good one. I like that. They set a standard so high nobody knows where they stand anymore. See, that's the kind of stuff that I would write. Like, because there's a wordplay in standard and stand. Like, there was no wordplay in it's odd how some women would be more insulted by a compliment than a compliment or an insult. So it was just like, it wasn't overwritten. I like to overwrite things. Anyways. Just don't signal jam your cat. Oh, okay. You guys, my evergreen musical, it's coming along. I have 10 songs. They're not all finished yet, but I did want to sing one. I sent it to Stacy Brown. So what happened at the Evergreen State College was that the students took over the college for a week, and they went after Brett Weinstein first, and then the campus cops were called, and the campus cops showed up, and then all this crazy stuff happens. You know the story, but Stacy Brown was the head of the police. So I have her song. How does it go? I only have the first verse and the second verse, and I'm going to sing it to you, so I apologize for singing to you, but what does it go? Okay. So the setting is that there's these students that are having a struggle session with the administration, and the administration up front in this room, there's Brett Weinstein, there's George Bridges, who's the college president. Brett Weinstein's a professor who is questioning certain aspects of the equity agenda. And then there's the Stacy Brown character, who is the police officer. And George Bridges is keep on trying to keep order, and the students will sing a song expressing their discontent, and then somebody else will sing the song trying to explain what's going on. And so that's basically the musical. And so Stacy Brown tries to explain what was going on, and they go like this. And a lot of this is actually taken from the Evergreen, from the footage. Like I'm playing with the words, but a lot of these statements are from the footage. Okay, so they start. Look at this woman, she isn't human. She's just a piece of bacon with a gun on her hip. Imagine her nerve defending the white man, macing us and tasing us for giving him lip. And then she sings, I didn't mace you, but you would have though. Every 22 hours, one of your pig bros executes another man whose only sin is to be American, born in the wrong skin, wrong skin, wrong skin, wrong skin. All cops are bastards, thugs of slave masters. And that's all I have for that. But I like that. You come up with these phrases and then you're like, what do I do with it? Look at this woman, she isn't human. She's just a piece of bacon with a gun on her hip. Like I like months ago that came to my head and I recorded it, and then I was looking through my phone, my recordings, and I found that. I'm like, oh my God, where did that one come from? I don't remember where these things come from, but I like that one. Because Stacy Brown actually was emailed. They actually emailed her photos of Oscar Mayer bacon. Like that's how terrible they were to this woman, the students. So I was just thinking about that and how she's the hero for me of that whole story. Look at this woman. She isn't human. She's just a piece of bacon with a gun on her hip. And then there's Decolonize This Space, which is, I don't think I should sing that on live stream. I should get Clifton Duncan or a female version of him to do that because it is so sultry. Oh my God, that's a good song though. I don't think I should sing it on it. It just doesn't sound right, but it's all from their mouth. It's all things that they actually said. I think there's only one thing that's super offensive, but it's not really that offensive. It's just offensive to the people who are offended by everything. How's it go? Okay, so what's happening is that George is trying to calm down the crowd, and they keep on policing his hands, right? And then actually in the evergreen footage, this woman says, "That's what I think, George. You're just using your hands this way and that way, so I'm going to decolonize this space," right? And so the song is, and it's not, this is something that's not my voice, but I'm gonna decolonize this space. Wipe that smirk off of your face. We built these cities, Georgie Porgy. While you white folk were up in your caves, I'm gonna decolonize this space. Divide students up by their race. If you be white, get in the back. If you be black, get up in their face. And you know that whiteness is the most violent system to ever breathe. You know that blackness is so beautiful, but you won't let us breathe. That's all I have for that one. I have to finish that one too. It's really over the top, but it's real. They said all that. They actually said, "We are your ancestors. We built these cities while you were in your caves." Like, wait, what? Wait, what? They actually said that to George. Things that they said. Anyhow, do I dare look at the chat after this? Somebody's calling me bacon. Look at this woman. She isn't human. She's just a piece of bacon with a gun on her hip. So I was yesterday I was collating all those songs. They're all done and stuff. And I don't know what I would even do. I don't even know what I would even do. Once I have all the songs, I need to get a librettist. I need to get a playwright to fix it all. Or just talk to Clifton Duncan. See if he can hook me up with the right person. Jerry Springer, the opera. Okay. Ola says there's a Jerry Springer opera out there. I'll take a note on that. I don't know if I want to see that. That make me feel dirty. Jerry Springer. Jerry Springer. So, you know what? Again, I hope you guys have a good privilege having day, you know. Time to just bask in your wealth and your glory and your inflation of your ego from all of the things that you don't deserve in life and yet is just given to you. You know, you don't need to feel grateful anymore. It's sufficient to feel sorry. They're really promoting that. There was this film or like this 2-minute little speech that was actually, it was going around, and it was just basically just like MSNBC actually published this video, you know, on one of their specials about how Thanksgiving is just about genocide and celebrating genocide or whatever, right? And they did this little spiel about it, and then we all get to make fun of it. I can't remember what I was saying about that. Actually, I did. I said it's not enough to be grateful. You have to be sorry now. Privilege having day, hashtag. And then, but the guy who they interviewed was actually a part of the Evergreen State College's Coming Together Call for Action lecture series that taught the students that everything is inherently racist and needs to be overthrown. So the guy that MSNBC is propping up is the same guy that Evergreen propped up. And then, like, look what happened at Evergreen. It's so odd, this grift. Is absolutely black-hearted baloney. There's no reason to believe that. No reason to feel bad about it. Though it is like, if people take it seriously, and so far as they do take it seriously, you just gotta stand your stuff. Definitely need to catch up with your videos. Dilly D, are you talking about me or Telvito or Meg? Dark you going on about? Okay, I don't know. See, there's a problem with chat. I don't know what's going on. You guys are having conversations. I don't know what I'm talking about. Or you know what you're talking about, but I don't know what you're talking about. Wow, this musical sounds horrifying, but also strangely intriguing. Maybe there's one more. Maybe there's one more I could read. Evergreen musical. Look at this woman, she isn't human. Oh yeah. I already sang you guys The Stolen Land. This is a good one. All right. Sorry, we're doing a holiday sing-song thing. I do need to work on the Wokemas Christmas album, but I should have started that a month ago. And I don't know where all the songs that I wrote last year about is, so I've been distracted by this stuff. Stolen Land. So I think this is the opening song. This is like the first part of the first act is going to be at the canoe meeting. So they're in the canoe meeting, and what happens at the Evergreen State College is that they propose this equity proposal that promises to solve racism on the college and throughout the world. And so this is kind of the opening song. And they're all standing up there with this document, which is a bunch of cooked up data. Okay. It goes like this. We're standing on stolen land. Oh no. Okay. Maybe I can put this onto things. It's hard to like sing some of these softly because they are so freaking. They're written for really loud speaks. Okay, wait. I'm gonna try to. Oh, here we go. V, and then here. And then, whoa. Camera's margin. Where's the, I don't see any, oh, there we go. Wait. There we go. Okay. And then add. Okay. So this is, here's the lyrics. You guys can see them on the screen. It's just, there's no title to it. It's just kind of the opening song. Wait, can I make it bigger? We're standing on stolen land, settlers and heirs to violence, centuries of suffering, and no one before us minded this. But now we are here and we care and we're queer. No fear, we have tools to dismantle swiftly all duplicity, complicity. Your colonies we despise and join the cries of every BIPO. CLGBTQ plus IAETC, etc. And now we board this canoe and paddle it through the storms of Trump's America, filled with hate and rape and disparities of race, which we defeat with haste so brave. Ever since mankind came out of caves, there has never been a more progressive leap than this report on equality. The best song is Race War, though. And Day of Absence is pretty good. Race War, and then I'm Not Oppressed is probably the best. But that's enough singing for tonight. I'm Not Oppressed is actually, it's a sincerely heartbreaking song because you have Brett Weinstein's student trying to stand up to the mob and saying, wait, you're speaking for me, but I'm not oppressed. I might have sang that already, but I don't think I can really let loose for that one. That's basically like, you guys remember that one movie that was actually a cartoon about that one redhead that was actually a mermaid that then became a human that was actually a redhead, but then got swallowed by a witch and then had to defeat her dad. And then her mom turned into a nasty bit of ghost flesh or something and spun out of control. And then she got to be a woman again, which was really a redhead. What am I thinking about? Little Mermaid. There's that one Little Mermaid song where she's on the rocks and the ocean kind of goes whoosh behind her and she's just like, ah. That's like the thing, and just this longing song for actual justice and love. Anyways, thank you for allowing me to shame or entertain thee with the makings of an Evergreen the musical! ! Okay, Rebecca really wants to know when this is coming out. I'm getting close. I just need a few more songs. Hammerstein and Goldsmith, or those guys, they did 12 songs per musical, but I would need to write the actual play and figure it all out. So with regards to the writing of this, the songs come first, and then I'm putting all the songs together into something that could reasonably put on a stage, right, with a couple of scene changes. There's one fancy song where Brett Weinstein says history could pivot in this hallway. And that's like, because he comes out, he's like, history could pivot in this hallway. The values that you hold could come undone. And he goes from the hallway to the stairway to the library to Tucker Carlson to Joe Rogan, and then it ends back in the hallway. And he just goes through all these verses trying to figure out, he's trying to explain why they're wrong, to their ideology is wrong, and the students are chanting at him every time and stuff. So that's a really fun one. So that one, that particular scene change will be like a really like magnificent bit of theater, because the set will have to change around him as he goes from being in a hallway to being in that crowd to being, on Tucker and then on Joe Rogan, and then back in that hallway. So that would be kind of complex, but I think it's pretty easy. I just need to figure out the third act now. I don't really have any songs for the third act. Race War is a really good song. I mean, that will be one. If this was allowed to be produced, that's the one that people will be singing on their way home, because Race War is just like phenomenal. Like, I'm not praising myself. Like, these songs just pop out of nowhere. I love that one though. Yeah. That happens right after Brett Weinstein. I'll just sing the first part of that. It's really good though. And then everybody can sing it when it goes on because it's so catchy. We want a race war, a race war. We're gonna watch the bodies of the privileged hit the floor. In a race war, a race war. We're divvying identity and giving it a score. There's so many different verses. I'm gonna do it right now. I finally finished that one. I finally finished out. No, I'm still done. So it goes from the whites to the blacks, and then all the other people are like given this ultimatum to either join the race war or be killed by, or, squashed by it, and so they go through this whole racist ideology, which is purely black and white. And what you do with the so-called POC is just to force them to either be with the blacks or the whites. That's basically how this stuff operates in real time. They either appropriate these identities or force these identities and shame these identities into obeying this intersectional hierarchy and stuff. We want a race war, a race war. We're gonna watch the bodies of the privileged hit the floor. In a race war, a race war. We're divvying identity and giving it a score. Somebody wants to know if Alex Jones will be in the musical, but I need that third act. So the third act is somehow going to be some sort of resolution to that. So the first act is kind of like the lead up to the protest. The second act is the protest and just that struggle session. And then how do we resolve it? Well, I mean, we know what happens. There's the Bat Gang, and then Chalkman comes up, which would be interesting to do the Chalkman song because he's writing about Limp Bizkit, but I'm not going to rip off Limp Bizkit, so I'm going to have to do some Limp Bizkiting. I've never really gotten a Limp Bizkit. So I'll try to figure out their song, and then R.N. Lawrence, and then Patriot Prayer shows up, and then some sort of media circus. I don't know what the denouement would be. I don't know what would be. We should probably just go completely crazy with it and have an actual crucifixion at the end. Like where they're gonna, like the scene where they're gonna crucify Brett Weinstein, but at the last minute they say, he's not enough, and so they take the Bill of Rights and they take the United States Constitution and they say this is what we're after, and then they nail that to the cross, and then they have some sort of like. They go back, and it ends where it begins with the, what's that first line? We're standing on stolen land, settlers and heirs to violence, centuries of suffering, and no one before us minded this. Yeah, that's how it would end. Something like that. Something that gets a little too uncomfortable, where they're actually going to crucify a Jew. And then at the last minute, they're like, oh, you know what? This is about the ideology. The man's just a symbol. Let's go for the actual symbols now. That might be how to end it. And then like this weird kind of like this exhaustion scene where like the ritual is completed and everybody's kind of like laying in their dribbly orgy bits, right? At the end of equity, they've created equity. And then there's like this this nice little song that comes through that like allows the audience to be relieved, even though it's totally grotesque. So we'll be like completely grossed out by it, but also like we won't be able to ignore just how powerful the ritual is. And that's what the internal meaning would be of the musical, would be to take the performance that the Evergreen students did, take the performative activism that they did, lift it up into parody, but do it with so much intensity and so much musicality that we actually take their emotions, we refine them through humor, we purify them into their utter essence, and then display them for what they are. And so even though it's an inversion of everything created by God on this earth, everything that's holy and sacred, even though it's a complete inversion of that, the audience is unable to ignore the catharsis that they feel, so that we can actually sympathize directly with the students' feelings, the amount of power and catharsis that they were acting out during 2017 Evergreen, 2020 America, and then whatever further protests we're going to have, so that the audience will at once be completely disgusted, but also completely attuned with their feelings. That would be the goal. That would be the ultimate ideal of the musical. Transmute the actual into the comical and then make it tragic. Bam. So we'll have to organize that. So that would be the third one. Just like these weird roving bands and songs about the Bat Mob and the Selfie Crew and the noodly armed gender specifying pronoun gang, and then Patriot Prayer, and then the scapegoat. That would be like it would be the scapegoat, where they're gonna nail up the heretic, right? Brett Weinstein, the heretic, but at the last minute it changes. Wow. That was a productive session. I just needed to talk this stuff out. I was feeling like I don't have an agenda. I was feeling like, what is the worth of all this cultural critique? What is the worth of all this discourse? And then we had to venture into bare bones rhetorical argumentation and polemic by Benjamin Boyce. And then we actually got to the work. So I think we're getting closer. So if you guys have any hints on how to bring it to the next level, contact me on Twitter. Looks like people are having fun in the chat. I like the chat. There's a lot of different people talking. That's great. I mean, I don't mind it when there's only a few. I feel a little bad when there's only like 2 or 3 people that are hogging it, just because I'd like a rich, expansive thing. It sounds like we did a good. Sounds like we had a good time. Look at the time. I don't know what to do next. Okay. You guys have any finishing? Okay. So, to finish the thought, cancel. To finish the thought about the musical, it would be, I'm transmuting the actual into the comic and then the comic into the tragic. And I went to the modern meaning of comedy, as in like ridicule and satire. Right. So going from the actual to the satirical and then into the reified tragic. And by tragic, I mean more of like a classical Aristotle version of tragedy, which is about catharsis, which is about the this rendering of man as a vessel of the gods. And the gods in this case would be the intersectional project. The gods would be, in this case, utopia. And that all these actors are rendered as vessels for the outpouring of utopic ambrosia, which is completely orgiastic and completely sensual and short-sighted. Oh, there's more material. Thanks for letting me talk about this. I can see more material now. But it would actually be rendering the ridicule into something super serious, and something supra self-conscious, because the satirical is very self-conscious, right? So we all know that this stuff happened. It's based on a real event, and it's beyond parody because it's all taken from these extreme behaviors that you couldn't even create if you wanted to write the evergreen novel and you just put that on the market. If there was no video showing that this actually happened, it would be beyond the pale. Nobody would believe it, but it actually happened. So we're going to take the actual happen that's unbelievable, then we're going to render it ridiculous by showing it and then playing with it in a fun manner with art and music and dance and song and dance and stuff, and kind of like take the piss out of it or give it the piss or whatever you do with the piss. Still don't understand what you do with the piss. You take the piss, you give the piss, you take the piss out of it, whatever. So you put it into a cartoonish form, and then you take that cartoonish form and you turn it into myth. Right, you distill it into myth, where the fun and the funniness of it starts to be so believable, and the music of it just starts to become so driving, and the climax and that the gravity of the catharsis is pulling us so much that we forget. The audience kind of forgets for a moment that this is parody and this is reality. They just live it. Everybody, like, that would be the whole goal of the musical, and how to create an arc out of it would be to just get the wheels completely off, where everybody is just caught up in this orgiastic, progressive, utopic ritual, right? Which would have to end with some sort of very explicit and therefore sacrilegious imagery at the end with the nailing of the guy to the cross. I think it's got to be a cross. I can probably... That came intuitively, so I think that's the proper way to do it. And then the switching of the scapegoat with the actual ideology. I don't know how you would do that. It sounds a little too cheesy to just do the Bill of Rights of the Constitution of the United States. That sounds too explicit. So really, the art is to get as explicit as possible while maintaining like some sort of like plausible deniability of propaganda, right? Maintain some sort of ambiguity that's potent at the same time. Super chat from M. Connect with John Cleese. He's extremely on the same page. I would be incredibly surprised if he didn't find him. The world needs this. I know somebody who knows him, actually. I think I might have a connection to John Cleese. I would have to work with somebody who could organize this into an actual legit screenplay. I need some secretarial assistance, but then we start to pull on getting people to do me favors or whatever it is, connections, and then get a big backer like that, right? Got to figure it out first, though. The content comes first. That's the only way to finish the evergreen story for me, is to do that. There's the last thing to do. I mean, I have to do this freaking Dexter Gordon thing, which is kind of just like blah. Like, of course that's what he wants. Of course communism is what he wants. Of course he's teaching these teachers critical race theory. Of course he's doing that. Like, there's no surprise to that in here at all. This is what Evergreen wants. It's what they're always saying they're going to do. So here we go. They're going to do it. It's like inevitable. What's not inevitable is a freaking musical. What's not inevitable, or obvious, I should say, but totally inevitable, is taking that, turning it into comedy, and then turning that comedy into tragedy and the coup d'etat. You just effect the coup d'etat on the entire movement. I don't think anybody's done that. I don't think anybody's done has taken the social justice stuff from parody to tragedy yet. That's the thing that hasn't been done. I mean, there's plenty of comics that are much better than me, but I don't think anybody's actually created a tragedy out of it. A tragic comedy, right? Because there's definitely tragedy. I mean, a good example of it was written 20, 30 years ago, which is The Human Stain by Philip Roth. And I love that book. Pretty good movie. A wonderful book. He laid all out campus culture. I mean, not to the extent we saw at Evergreen, but I mean, the tragedy is already there. The comedy's already there, but what we need to do is turn it into ritual and allow people to actually go through it. And then if we can make it as effective as possible and as catchy as possible, people like even people who are kind of social justice-y and wokey, they'll be uncomfortable. They'll want to cancel it, but then they'll feel their body move, they'll feel their body move, and then they'll go through the end, and you show them the end of their ideology, right? You loosen up their critical thinking or their ideological thinking, their critical theory, their ideology. You loosen that up by going through the body, going through the heart, going through the laughter. And of course, it's going to be super canceled because you can't do that. You can't make people laugh because that is the one thing that tyrants can't afford. They cannot afford laughter because it renders them powerless. Laughter renders this ideology powerless. So just on the fact of it being funny is enough to cancel it, but it going from funny into absolutely just showing exactly on a very charismatic level the end game of this stuff, which is delusatory. Let's look up the word. Desultory. Desultory. Lacking a plan, purpose, or enthusiasm. Well, it's the opposite of that. I meant like desolate. Not desultory. Desolate. Not showing up. Maybe I just made up that word. Dissolute? Yeah, dissolute. Lax in morals. Okay, it's dissolute. Lax in morals, licentious. Yes, that's what I meant. Dissolute. Licentious. Dissolving. Oh. Best way to contact me, Common Cure. My email is in the About page on my, if you're watching me on YouTube, go to the Benjamin Boyce channel, then go to the About tab. Prove you're not a robot, and then my email will be right there. Also, you can contact me through Twitter on Benjamin A. Boyce or at Benjamin A. Boyce, and my DMs are open. If you don't have Twitter, then email is probably the best bet, and that is found on my About page. Jolie Lade writes, the worst smackdowns I've endured were from making people laugh at my enemy. Laughter is all kinds of powerful. Loosh. Desultory. No, it's not desultory. Desultory. Lacking a plan, purpose, or enthusiasm. They have the enthusiasm. They have purpose. They have kind of a plan, but they don't have a telos. They don't have an end, or that end is always obscured or always deferred. They want infinite revolution, but when you ask, well, what is your plan? What is your end? Like, that's why I don't want to use desultory, because they have plenty of enthusiasm. They have plenty of purpose, but it's in effect. There's also of conversion or speech going constantly from one subject to another in a half-hearted way, unfocused, kind of my live streaming style, and occurring randomly or occasionally. Skipping about. It's also literally from Latin, skipping about or superficial, literally relating to a vaulter. Oh, so desultory actually comes from the Olympic game of vaulting. Go freaking mad, language. So that's the thing. When we go back to puritanicalism within language, it's like, how would we ever, if language was always enforced and definitions would always be enforced, we would never get from vaulting or being like a vaulter to a word that sounds, it's once you figure out how to say it, it's a pretty cool word. Desultory. Desultory. What does that mean? It means lacking a plan. Well, where does that come from? Being superficial, skipping around, like a vaultist. Like a vaulter, sorry. From the verb desulire. So that's why kind of language changes and recombines and breaks apart. And that spending too much time on policing language is, one, you have to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, and know when to correct, and know when to let the chips fall where they may. And two, the innovation that occurs when mistakes happen is phenomenally potent stuff. So, especially in language. Oi, oi. Oh, somebody's propping up salutations. UK's. Okay. I don't know. Maybe we should leave. Maybe we should go. I don't want to leave. Adam and Sitch, they go on for 5 hours. So I was studying Adam. So I had Adam. I live streamed with him a week ago. Like I think it was Thursday, and I live streamed with him, and I was watching him. I was just like paying attention to how he goes about doing his talking thing, because like he talked with me for 2 hours, and before that he had talked with Sitch live streamed for 5 hours. This is Adam friended. Him and Sitch do a live stream every Sunday. I was just watching him just allow the conversation to keep on going. And around the hour and a half mark, I'm like, okay, let's start to arc this closed. Let's start to wrap up the episode. But he just like, he opened the can, and the chorus just flows. Like the coursing waters, the cool coursing waters. What was that beer? Cool coursing waters. This is from when I was 4 or 5. I would see it on the TV when you could still have. Do they still have beer ads on TV? Well, this was a cartoon. I know you can't have cartoons, but like the rushing waters, and there was a bear on it. Does anybody who's my age or older remember a cartoon about a beer with a bear in it? Do I have to look it up on Google? Cartoon beer bear. Cartoon waters beer commercial bear. Come on. Yeah, Hams, the beer refreshing. I'll play it. Oh, should I? Probably shouldn't play it.
From the land of sky blue waters, waters. From the land of pines, lofty blossoms, comes the beer refreshing.
From the land of rising waters, waters. Yeah. It was actually a cartoon of a bear and a rabbit like playing baseball. Like totally not appropriate if a kid watches that. I guess, I don't know. I guess alcohol is not as bad as it used to be, or it's worse than it used to be, or something like that. I don't know. From the land of rushing waters. At this point, so I didn't want to say like I'm a good musician or anything like that, because I'm not. It's just stuff that comes, right? It's just like you just find these little tunes, and they're just scattered about. They're laying everywhere. And I think that I learned that from TV. It was actually, you just watch TV and these songs are there. It's like, okay, well, the songs are on TV. Why are songs not in trees? Why are songs not like on the road when I'm riding my bike? Why are songs just on TV? Like that doesn't make any sense. Like they're everywhere, right? They just end up popping up on TV with cartoons appended to them. Right? That's my attitude towards les muses. Okay, here we go. Oh, Himmel's Damon. I think some distinction between expanding references could be made. Purism for language would seem to sacrifice the former to stop the latter. Yeah, there's a with regards to what I was talking about and what I've been kind of working around, works on the level of the word and it works on the level of the drama, which is either a contraction or an expansion of sense. And certain forms of comedy, we say, or comedy, let's say, or comedy, certain forms of comedy are the dissolution of meaning. By expanding the meaning, by contrasting the meaning, you break the category. And then certain forms of anti-comedy or ritualism or religiosity or belief or even philosophy, especially like analytic philosophy, is all about concentrating and contracting the meaning and making it very specific. And there's an interplay with the usefulness of those two modes of playing with word or using word to make a play. Does the play expand meaning? Does it loosen us from our categories of meaning, which is a good comedy thing? It loosens the categories of meaning. Or does it constrict meaning? Does it constrict experience? And when we talk about just a basic drama like a murder mystery or anything, or a thriller, let's say, it's contracting the sensation, not so much the sense. A thriller doesn't necessarily have much, if any, symbolism going on in that. Peugeot, you could expand on it and say that there are symbolic principles going on in order to connect with the thrilling aspect of the event, but something that's a little bit more studied, a little bit more high art, I would say, would be much more intentional with how it's contracting sense and sense. Again, it's using meaning and it's using the sensation of engaging with meaning. It's using drama, and it's also using some form of ritual, and then working out meaning, and there's a contraction or an expansion of sense in that sense. And it's not purely entertainment, though. If it's good, it's entertaining, it's beautiful, it has certain sorts of sensory properties, even if it's working on a deeper symbolic level. But the sense, I would think, or I would suppose, in higher art or more intentional art, let's say, I don't have no problem with being an elitist about art. Actually, it's the loss of elitism in art. It's what gave us the crap art that we have now. Like, we kind of need elite meritocracy and all that stuff in art. But anyways, higher art would be more intentional with the symbolism that it's making, not necessarily to turn it into a sense or a statement, right? So it would be, the problem with art is that, does it produce a statement at the end? And that is another contraction of meaning. If the work of art can be reduced into a statement, then it is basically either propaganda or pedagogy. It's either to prove a point or to make a point or to facilitate the believing or a certain perspective at the end of the work of art. It culminates in a statement, which is another contraction of sense. And to what degree the evergreen musical has a statement to make, I would much rather that statement be made in the feelings of the audience as they leave that theater, right? To alchemically take the statements of social justice, render them human or dramatic, and then allow people to witness them on a dramatic, like physical, nominal, numinal, and emotional level, like on some lower level than the statements. Like, take those statements to the actual conclusion, right? This belief turns into this mode of being. So the belief system's up here, like all the words, and then we take the belief, we organize it in such a way that people can actually sense the being that it produces, that belief produces. So that's another way of contracting and expanding sense. But with regards to language and modifying language, there is a certain sort of like keeping things in line for a specific purpose, like an argument, like I was saying. But there's also playing around with that in order to loose words from their meaning. And people when people's belief system is really tensely wrapped up in some sort of like right or wrong, righteousness kind of motivation, they can't handle. It's not just humor. Right? It's not just that people are laughing at them. It's that the laughter is showing that there's a release of energy from these terms. Like they're actual, the building blocks from which they've constructed their worldview is basically being detonated. The laughter is just the sound. The emotion is just the energy being released. They don't care about the energy being released. They don't care about laughter. They care that it's exploding, or the comic or the joke, the formula is taking their statement and it's rendering it basically meaningless. It's making it mean something less than it meant by making other people take it less seriously than they do. So their seriousness with regards to their belief is a contraction of the sense. And it's trying to stabilize their belief system into these containers, and then something like a comedy or ridicule or argument destabilizes that. And that's why they have a problem with that. It's not necessarily free speech that they care about. It's not necessarily comedy that they care about. They care about their value system and their sacred and profane structures, and the violation of those sacred and profane structures they take as violence to their entire belief system and their world. And then they translate that into this facilitates the murder of different people, right? They hyperbolize into this murder thing, and this violence actually is violence. The words are violence. But what they're really talking about behind that is that the system purports to save the world. And if you destroy the system, then the world reverts back into a pre-saved state, even though it's already fallen, right? They can't handle that because they're on a mission. And that happens with a lot of different belief systems. Anybody who's trying to fight for, some sort of justice can get caught up into believing so much in the terms of engagement that they can't handle any counter engagement to the terms, right? Everything has to proceed according to their ways of engaging. And comedy and the smart people, or the people who are able to be flexible with their beliefs, throw that under the bus. And it hurts them. Here we go. Okay, so I'm going to tell you guys a secret. You don't mind if I tell you guys a secret? So when people say, what do I want to do? Like, what's my goal? And I say, I want to make women laugh and men cry. I say that. I love that formula. I want to make men laugh and women cry. Like, that's the goal of what I'm trying to do on YouTube. Hexagram cut to the quick and interpreted that as when the heart begins to think and the mind begins to feel. Right? Laughter is thinking, feeling. And it's not necessarily sorrow or depression, but crying, or the opposite of laughter, is a feeling, thinking. Laughter is a thinking, feeling, and sorrow is a feeling, thinking. Right, and you could probably with the sorrow thing, you can probably see symbolism of this, and also if you know depressed people, they're usually really heavy thinkers. They usually think too much, or that depression inspires or is accompanied by a lot of thoughts, like sorrow or crying. What, weeping? Yeah, weeping is feeling, thinking. It's like a processing, right? And laughter is a thinking, feeling. It doesn't make sense. It makes sense. It doesn't make sense. It makes sense. It's all magic, anyways. It's all prestidigitation. What is it called? Diversion. Is that what they do? Like when the magician like diverts your gaze. There's another word for that. Oh God. All right. Okay. Any more thoughts? I'm working on a video game that I really enjoy, and it's not too deep, and it doesn't take too much of my brain or my mind, and it's not really that addictive, but it's really nice. It's just a nice video game. It's called, and this is the first in the series. It's a series of games that are 25 years old now. It's called the Tales series, and it's a JRPG, a Japanese role-playing game. So there's certain dynamics with that. I'm playing the latest one. It's called Tales of Arise, and the art direction is fantastic on it. It's just such a beautiful game. It's really cheesy. The plot's cheesy, and it's kind of got these like kind of anime trappings about it, and the dynamics and stuff like that. The gameplay is actually pretty cool. It's pretty like very on the rails for the most part, and there's side quests so you can go back and forth. But because they put so much time into it on a visual level, like there's only so much open worldness you can do on a visual level. There's a cost benefit, or there's trade-offs with when you go to kind of a more closed world versus an open world with regards to how much detail you can do. And even then, I guess there's a lot of repetition in the battles and stuff like that. But it's just such a beautiful game. Just visually, just absolutely beautiful. It's called Tales of Arise. There's a couple that came out on last generation, I believe, called Tales of Bathsheba or something. I've only ever read it, never actually said it out loud. So that's the video game that I've been playing. I'm going to play about half an hour of that tonight. I need to figure out what to eat for dinner because I don't know what to cook for dinner. But tomorrow is going to be chicken, though I really, really, really want to make fresh French fries. And I don't know if you can have smoked chicken and French fries. I don't know if you're allowed to do that, so I might not be able to do that. I might have to wait on the French fries, but I really kind of want to do French fries, fresh fried French fries. But I know I'll do a chicken. Oh, I'll do beef stroganoff tonight. That's what I'm going to do, beef stroganoff. I have all the ingredients, and I have the beef right there, and I should cook it before anything else. So that's what I'm going to have. I hope you guys get to eat. Berseria. Thanks, LR. You look like somebody who has the patience to know these things. Berseria. I didn't mean to be jocular, but I really do like your avatar. There's something poetic and sweet about that, and sad and sorrowful and sympathetic at the same time. Tales of Berseria, which I haven't played. I'm playing Tales of Arise, which is really easy to say. Okay. Roast potatoes. Yeah, I'll probably do roast potatoes, but then I don't want to do French fries after that. Okay, Jolie Lady. Yeah, the thing is, whoa, my goodness, what did I do? Oh, Jesus. Oh, Jesus and the Jews. Jesus and the Jews. Okay, here we go. Yeah, the thing I was reading said the Egyptians just scooped the brains out when making a mummy, but all sorts of stuff was done with the heart to indicate it as the center of being, so to speak. This is why you just dive in and chat. Super chat. Look at this. Another awesome anime avatar with glasses. Little witchy with that broom there. Super chat. Librarian Goth. Why did I read that first? I think you've been around. Hey, Ben, would you ever chat with Jordan Peterson? It'd be the calmest conversation ever. Eventually, he did tell me once that he wants to speak with me, but he's waiting for himself to heal. I don't know what that means. Like, would I damage his health? Or would I be too demanding of his health? I don't know. But yeah, it's in the works. It'll happen when it happens, hopefully. Yeah, I would like to have Jordan Peterson on. It would be great to actually just have a quiet conversation with him and hear his relationship with silence. Okay, that's it. You guys are great. Have a good evening. Happy holiday. Happy Thanksgiving. Love your loved ones, and treat your enemies with just enough respect to persuade their audience towards better pastures. God bless. I'll see you soon. Goodbye.